My name's Amanda and I'm the founder of I Can Make Shoes, and today I'm going to give you an introduction to footwear, and we're going to talk about some of the terms and some of the equipment that you're going to need to get started. When I first started in the world of shoes, I had no idea what anything was or what I was doing, quite frankly. So what I want to do in this video is just give you a run through of the parts so that when you're getting started you just kind of know what's what. I do have this how to put a shoe together download, which has a little picture of everything and what it's called and what it's used for. So I'll add a link to that, but we'll just go through them one by one in this video so that you'll know what's what. Okay. First of all is the shoemaking last. Now this is sort of like the equivalent to the dressmaker's mannequin. It is totally essential when you're making shoes that you have a last. In saying that, sometimes I can make sandals and things without a last, where you can just sort of put the straps over your foot to understand where the positioning should be. But most of the time when you're making any kind of closed shoe, you will need a last. Now, there are millions of different styles of lasts out there in the world. They come in different heel heights. You can see this one's quite high heel. So you can get flat ones, mid-heel ones, any different height really. They determine the size of the shoe as well. So if you want to make a whole range in different sizes, you'll need a last for every single different size. And lastly, they determine the toe shape and the width here as well. So quite often what you'll see with shoemakers is that they'll get a standard last and then they'll make adjustments to the last to accommodate extra width, or maybe if they want to slightly change the toe shape. So I would recommend for your first last that you get it in your size so that you can practice on yourself. Okay, so from that point on, everything to do with shoemaking is really all about piecing together the puzzle. So we start with our last. The last always comes first. And then the next piece we need to add is our insole. Now this also comes in different heel heights and sizes. So as you can see, this insole board fits really nicely in the pitch of the last here. But I'd obviously need to trim down some of that excess on the front and maybe even a little bit on the back there as well. The insole board is kind of like the backbone of the shoe. It holds everything together, and especially when you're making a high heel, it also holds all of the body weight. So it does actually have a metal shank on the inside here, which is really sturdy, and that's what sets off the alarms when you go through the airport. But it is really essential. If you don't have a shank in a high heel insole board, that arch will just collapse. So quality insole boards, really important. The next thing on the list is your heel, and again, your heel has to fit your last. So you can see that one fits there nicely. If you go higher and higher and higher, it's starting to lift off the ground there, and then it sort of doesn't fit so well. So really making sure you get the heel that fits the same pitch as your last. So like I said, really piecing all the puzzle together. So your heels come next if you're making heels. If you're not making heels, of course, you'll just have a flat shoe and maybe you'll build up a little heel tip there or something. Next thing on my list is the uppers. Okay, so we call the uppers sort of like the shoe itself. So this would be considered the upper, okay, the leather or material that makes the shoe. Now, as you can see on this type of shoe, it just has two straps. Those straps are called the upper. Now, to make it a little bit more confusing, you have two pieces usually in an upper. You have the upper itself, which is the top piece of leather or material that you see, and then you have the lining. Now, the lining is separate to the upper, but once you stitch the two together, the whole thing becomes the upper. So if you ever hear someone talking about the upper, they're talking about the leather part of the shoe, or whatever material you're making it from. Okay, so moving down the list a little bit, we've got stiffeners. Now you can use leather stiffeners or you can use thermoplastic stiffeners. Thermoplastic stiffeners tend to sort of last a bit longer. Now How they work is that they come sort of like this, and they're heat activated. So essentially what you would be doing is melting it around the last to get the desired shape. So this one here is called a toe puff, and the toe puff goes in between the upper and the lining like that, and it's what holds the toe of the shoe upright when there's no last in it, basically. So if you didn't have a toe puff, it would just sort of collapse down like that when there's no last in there. The counter, which is this piece here, goes on the back, okay? So it goes on there like that, and again, it goes in between the lining and the upper like this. Usually this would have a last in it, by the way. So again, that one's really important because it sort of creates the structure to the back of a shoe and gives it that sturdiness to make sure it actually stays on your foot. So stiffeners are quite important. Moving on down from that, we've got our soles and our insole socks. Okay, soles, there are so many different options. I tend to use either leather, and more recently I've been using a resin as well, just because it's so durable and it lasts a lot longer. And I recently found one that's not an absolute nightmare to cut by hand. So I've been using that a lot recently. But other than that, I use a nice veg tan leather for the sole, and you just cut it to shape and put it on the bottom there. Now, I'm showing you high heels today, but just keep in mind everything I'm showing you is exactly the same for, you know, flat shoes, mid-heel shoes, men's shoes. The only difference in soles is that if you were making sneakers, you would have a sneaker sole. Okay, so last but not least, we've got our insock. So the insock goes on the inside of the shoe like that, and you'll see them more often than not in high heels and mid heels, because what needs to happen is that underneath here at the back, there's some screws that are going through the insole board and attaching it to the heel. So we're screwing in there like that, and we end up with 2 screws, or sometimes 3, visible on the inside of the shoe. So we create an insole sock which goes over the top, covering those screws. It also is a really great opportunity to put a little bit of memory foam in there for extra comfort. Okay, so now you know what the core ingredients are for shoemaking. We talked a little bit about the terminology. If all you've learned in this video today is what a last is, then you've come a lot further than I was when I started out. And in case you're wondering how this looks when it's put together, the last actually goes inside the upper like that. Okay. And then we mold the whole thing around the last, and you can see that's really starting to take the form of a shoe. Okay, well, I hope you found that helpful. As always, any questions are welcome, and I'll see you next time.